Welcome. It's Monday, 1 o'clock, and guess what? Steel Doctor Livestream time. Now, today I want to talk about escalation clauses, kind of take it to a next level up sort of thing, and address some confusion that exists out there about escalation clauses and see if we can answer some of those questions for you. I hope you're ready to take some notes and ask some questions if what I'm going to present is confusing. And if your head explodes, I can assure you, you won't be alone, because what I'm going to tell you is revolutionary in some sense. So the first step, so pay attention. We're going to have fun here today. Okay, first step is, this is a purchase agreement. I'm going to use the West Michigan Regional Purchase Agreement just because I have it handy. I made a comment on a Facebook post this morning about writing on an offer on the hood of a car. And yes, I actually do carry paper copies with me to write on a property if there's no Wi-Fi signal and we're in a hurry to bid. I write it on the hood of my car on a paper purchase agreement. So those of you who are doing everything by dot loop, I love to run down to the closest Burger King or whatever that has a Wi-Fi signal and write there, but you can still write them on purchase agreements, hard paper. Okay, on the purchase agreement, the very last page, page 6, there is the seller's response. The above offer is approved, checkbox as written, or checkbox as written except. This is really important because if you check the box as written, nothing needs to be written in here at all, does it? If you check the box as written except, then you stipulate the conditions that the seller finds unacceptable and they are responding back. The counteroffer, if any, expires at some time. Seller has the right to withdraw this counteroffer and accept other offers until seller or seller's agent has received notice of buyer's acceptance. So if there's anything written in here, the seller can rescind their counteroffer to you at any time. What constitutes a counteroffer? Anything that's written in here. If you put words in there, that constitutes a counteroffer. Now, we've been over this with Gail Anderson, one of the sharpest real estate attorneys in Michigan, and we're going to get to that part in a minute, but I want to point out this paragraph on page 6 is very important, because as written or as written except, as a seller, what are you going to check there, and do you need to? So here we go. First of all, I want to read the language that we've written. If you're writing an offer like Kelly is today, good luck, Kelly. Hope it wins. I want to read to you the language that we have for you in dot loop. It says, buyer offers a purchase price of some amount, but agrees to hereby escalate the offer to some amount more than any and all competing offers, including any competing offers with escalation clauses. That's an important point. Parentheses, minus seller concessions, from bona fide offers with pre-qualified buyers up to a maximum sales price of some cap amount. If the escalation clause is implemented, shall provide a copy of the competing offers and pre-qualification letters pertaining to those offers. Now, we wrote that as a group, submitted it to Gail Anderson for her approval, and we fine-tuned it and put it in dot loop. The reason that language is important is it weeds out those fake buyers. A buyer like, Uncle Charlie, who might write an offer with no intention of purchasing it, just to drive up the purchase price for their niece or nephew when another offer comes in with an escalation clause. It's not a real offer. It's not bona fide. It doesn't have a pre-qualification letter. So we want to ask to see those offers if there is an offer that triggers the escalation clause. Before I go further than that, though, that's in .loop under clauses. I encourage you to get familiar with it, know where to find it, know how to copy and paste it into a purchase agreement. Because in this day and age, escalation clauses are not going away. They're going to continue to be here. Are sellers required to accept an offer with an escalation clause in it? The answer is no. They're not required to accept an offer with an escalation clause. Some sellers feel as though it's buyers gaming the system. Sort of like when you go, you watch The Price is Right. I did that like 50 years ago. And you find that one person who bids $10,000 and then the next person bids $10,001. And sometimes you just go, oh. Well, that's kind of how sellers sometimes feel about escalation clauses. They feel as though if you were going to write your best offer, you had your opportunity to do it rather than play this game of escalating offers. Another piece of the language in there that's really important is that it includes any competing offers with escalation clauses. So I don't know about you, but when I was a kid playing sandlot baseball, we'd always start to figure out who was going to go first by doing the bat hand over hand over hand up to the top. Whoever got the top of the baseball bat got first at-bats. Escalation clauses work like that. If you have competing escalation clauses, they push it up to the maximum offer that it can go based on the purchase price, the cap, and the amount of the escalation clause. But again, seller doesn't have to accept any one of those. Doesn't have to accept the top one. Seller may decide, you know what? I like the lowest offer because it doesn't have an escalation clause and it's straightforward, good financing, and as long as that buyer or the seller is not discriminating on the basis of a protected class, they have every right to do it. So yes, they may accept a lower offer or an offer that has an escalation clause. It's their right to accept it. May a listing agent refuse to present an escalation clause? I know for a fact that there are agents out there, listing agents, who won't allow an escalation clause to be presented to their seller. That's not right. That's not in the law. In fact, it's counter to the law, unless, I always have an unless the listing contract specifically states the seller will not entertain offers with escalation clauses. If that's in the listing contract and signed by the seller, then the listing agent is not required to present the offer. Now, that offer may advise, that listing agent may advise that seller, may say at the presentation of the offer, I'm not real fond of escalation clauses, and I've got to tell you why. Sometimes we jack the price up to the point where it won't appraise, or sometimes the buyer is really at their breaking point at their lowest offer, but now they're going to try to compete and essentially not be approved for a mortgage at a higher price. They're basically rolling the dice that they can stay in the game long enough to try to get a mortgage, and if that doesn't work, then bring the price back down. So a listing agent, if they don't like escalation clauses, which is pretty old school in this day and age, they still have the right to advise their clients in the manner that they see fit, because they are a professional and a consultant to the seller. So even though a listing agent may say, you know what, I'm not going to present offers with an escalation clause, the agent does have the right to advise the client if they present it. Also, the seller has the right to counter the offer with a specific price without regard to an escalation clause whatsoever. So if you write an offer, for example, for $195, escalating to $2,000 with a cap of $210, that seller has a right to come back to you and say, seller agrees to a purchase price of $210,000. Escalation clause has no bearing, for example. And then so basically they're countering your basic offer at $200,000. Now, it's less than what you say you can afford, so that's a good thing. But it's a very clear statement, a very clear counter that says we are countering at a specific price. So, how are we doing so far? There's one thing I was going to try to.
A couple of questions.
Oh, I do. Before I take the questions, this is an important one. Escalation clauses for $500 or $1,000 over the other offer, in my view, are insignificant. Most sellers are not going to in fact, they shouldn't base their decision on a difference of $1,000 in an offer, particularly when you're talking about a home in the 150, 200, 300 and up range. $1,000 is nothing. I would base it, if I were a listing agent, I would evaluate those offers on the basis of the financing and the terms, possession, personal property to be included, all of those things. $1,000 is nothing. If you're going to get serious about doing an escalation clause, start at $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000. That will get a seller's attention. Now I'm going to switch over here and see what we got for questions. Why would the listing agent not want escalation clause? Isn't the most isn't the goal to get the most for your client? Why? I think I just explained why they would not. Did I?
I think you did.
I did. Okay.
You had the next question.
Okay, but what about escalation clauses with appraisal guarantees? Well, yes, obviously, if you've got an appraisal guarantee and the ultimate price, escalated price, is $210,000, and the appraisal comes in at $200,000, but your buyer has also included an appraisal guarantee of up to $10,000 more than the appraisal, then you've got a deal. You've still got a deal of $210,000. Those are going to be very strong offers. What's the ideal amount or percentage to escalate? Again, it depends on the price, but if you're talking about the $150,000 to $250,000 range, I wouldn't do less than $3,000. If you're talking about $250,000, $400,000, $500,000 range, I would think minimum would be $5,000, and probably as you go higher than that, it's going to kick up to $10,000 real fast. So it's kind of a thumbnail, but $1,000, I would bet that 90% of the offers with escalation clauses out there are $500 or $1,000. And frankly, as a listing agent, that's going to have absolutely no bearing on the advice that I give to my client about the strength of each offer, regardless of the escalation clause. Hope that answers your question, Kelly, but if not, try again. All right? Now, here's a question that came up, which took a bit of brain wrangling, I'll call it. Let's look at an offer. Here's offer number one. Offer number one is $197,000. Has an escalation clause to $2,000 over the next best offer, with a cap maximum purchase price they will allow of $210,000. That's offer number one. Offer number two is $200,000 with a $1,000 escalation clause and a $208,000 cap. Between these two offers, who wins and at what price? Well, that's not too tough to figure out, because this escalation clause isn't even in the ballpark, because if they escalate $2,000, they're still only at $199, less than the basic offer of this one. But I want to stop here for a moment, because which box do you write? Remember that 6th page of the purchase agreement where it says accept or accept? Which box do you write? Which box do you check? Now, most agents check offers accepted as written, except purchase price will be $200,000. And then you provide them with the triggering offer, if need be. In this case, doesn't even have to be. But you provide them with that and send it over to prove that there was a triggering offer and has established the purchase price that that a property may be escalated to. Guess what? You check that box right there and fill it in with that information. That's a counteroffer. The seller has the right to walk away from that offer and accept any other offer right then, the moment that you put that in. If they check the box accept, the question then is, well, where does it say what the price is? Well, let's take a look at number 3, offer number 3. Offer number 3 is $198,000, $5,000 escalation clause with a $212,000 cap. Again, we're going to throw that one away, number 1, because that didn't even get in the ballpark. We're going to go up against number 2. And sorry, got to go left to right. Number 2 says $2,000, $1,000 escalation up to $208,000. Well, that means that this offer, number 3, is the winning offer because they're, number 1, escalating to $212,000. They don't need to escalate $5,000 because the cap on this one is $208,000. So they could meet the cap here. Wait a minute, I did that wrong. They can meet the cap here at $208,000 and still have room. Let me change the number here because that's not really actually going to work out right. Okay, we're going to change that to $3,000 to give you the example. So, $208,000, they reached the cap because there's another offer. There was another offer there. They're at their $208,000 cap. That means that this offer adds an additional $3,000. They're still under their $212,000 maximum. If this is $208,000, you end up at $211,000, right? With the $3,000 cap. How do you accept that offer, though? That's the tricky part. How do you accept number 3? Can you just check the box, accept? And the answer is yes. You can check the box, accept, with no other language in it and have the seller sign it. Then you attach this offer when you send the offer over, and you've got a binding agreement. Does that sound shocking? Yeah, it did to me at first too. But the truth of the matter is that that has met the terms of the offer, and that this offer provided says that they're at 208, add 3, you got a purchase price of $211,000. Do you have to state the price of $211,000 in here? No, you don't. Now, except, because if you do, then you've got a counteroffer that seller will have every right to walk away from because it's a counteroffer. But if you mark the box accept, it's a done deal. Unless, what happens when the title company gets the work, the title work? What happens when the mortgage company gets the purchase agreement? What happens when the buyer says, well, what's the purchase price? Well, it's $211,000 because this is the offer and here's the competing offer. So you add 208 plus 3 is $211,000. Okay, still with under your cap, so everything fits together. But how do you make sure that the title company, the mortgage company, the buyer, that everybody's on the same page as far as what the purchase price is? Well, I would do it in an email. I would send all parties an email saying all parties agree based on the escalation clause in the offers and the triggering escalation clause that everyone understands that the purchase price is $211,000. Make sure the title company knows it. Make sure the buyer's agent, and the mortgage company, everybody, even the appraiser, everybody knows that the price is $211,000. The reason that this is worth talking about is this actual situation came up, actually more than once, with one of our agents where they posed the question, do I have to write something in there? And the answer was legally no, as I've just explained. The question is, how do you make sure that everybody's on the same page? Because ultimately, that deal went to closing, nobody caught it, and ultimately, they closed at the lower price because the mortgage company and the title company thought the price was the lower price because it hadn't been provided that email that I just discussed. So it's a challenging thing. Do you have an enforceable contract without stating the purchase price in on page 6 in the counter offer paragraph? Yes, you do. Is it a good idea to clarify it? Absolutely. Make sure that everybody understands, whether it's by email or whatever. If you feel more comfortable and you don't believe that you're going to lose the offer, then you can put it in here saying accepted, check the accepted box, and then indicate for clarification, all parties agree that the purchase price is $211,000. Is it a counteroffer? Yeah, kind of. It is. It says accept, and it says for qualification or for clarification only, all parties agree that it's $211,000. Could a good attorney for the buyer make a case that was, or for the seller make the case that was a counteroffer? Absolutely. Absolutely. So it depends on which risk you want to take in this situation.
People have some questions about the offers that you had because one of the questions in there says, it's Elizabeth Klopp says, shouldn't it be at 212,000 because of the offer cap from number one.
Well, let's look at that. Okay, so I've got a 197 with an offer cap of 210.
Hold it further this way.
I've got an offer cap of 210. However, the escalation clause is only $200,000 more than the competing offer. So they're not even in the game because the basic price of this offer is already above the maximum cap on this particular offer at 197. Now, if they had written it 198, then the answer would be yes. It would notch each other up to the 210,000 mark. And then this offer would be 213, which is over the cap. In that case, you probably would have to say, as a counteroffer, price to be $212,000, the cap of the offer. But again, the point of my conversation today is most agents clarify in that counteroffer area what the price ultimately is, where the price ends up. So you don't have to do that. Actually, according to the contract law, you don't have to do that. That's according to Gail Anderson. But you better make real sure that the mortgage company, buyer, everybody understands what the purchase price is. And the mortgage company may at some point say to you, you know, we need an addendum stating that the purchase price is such. And that may be a requirement of the mortgage company. But for example, if these were all cash offers, that wouldn't be a requirement. So it's pretty complex. And let's see, what other? Anything else? So I hope that helps. I know it's confusing. It's one that Paul and I and Eric and Greg and Kim have all wrangled our brains to wrap our brains around. But it is a fact that you don't have to counter in that page 6 counteroffer area if you have an escalation clause triggering bumping up that purchase price. So thanks for joining, and I will see you next week.